So it's not a really pretty picture, right? So for us, again, scaling is very important because if you have a lot of units, then you can go to the director and say, look, I'm trying to put through these 10 vouchers, waiting for like 10 days to get an appointment for inspection or even to get the original paperwork processed. You know, you have your, they have their timeline. They actually have like a time commitment, but that's almost never followed. So you have to pretty much have some kind of power in order to go to them and say, look, I got a lot of units with you guys. I don't want to keep doing this, I don't want to keep coming to you, but I need your help. And that's usually when you start getting stuff done. But yeah, most landlords in the Midwest tend to shy away from Section 8, which actually is good. Just in the few minutes that I was talking to people here, everybody's like, oh, Section 8, heard horror stories. Or, I've owned one and, I've gotten burned. And actually that works to our advantage, hard to say. Because, the less people that want to get involved, the more, we have access to.
So what you're saying is that the family gets a voucher, but it doesn't matter if they find a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, it's kind of like cash?
So the voucher actually is specific to the family size. Right, so if it's single woman, 2 kids, then they'll probably get a 3-bedroom voucher.
So the voucher does kind of dictate the asset type that they can spend it on.
Right, and actually to answer your question about the rental amount, so generally, I don't want to call it a phenomenon, but Section 8 tenants tend to all end up in the same areas. Usually the poorest part of town, the least expensive. That's just because that's where the housing is available for landlords to buy that house and be able to rent it long term to someone without it happens, but it's more like concentrated. So that being the case, it's very easy for the housing authority to actually do like rental comps. But not to say that they don't bungle all the time. I literally had a 2-unit building that had exactly the same units top and bottom, and 2 different caseworkers, because one of them, they go by alphabetical order. You do the A to C, D to Z, whatever. So one was new, and she gave us like 675, and the other one was experienced and was able to find comps outside of the norm because it was a really big unit. We got like 875. And the 675 just would not budge. Even though we said, why don't you talk to the person that's sitting right next to you? Because this is the exact same unit and use the same comps that you use. So they do what's known as a rent reasonableness assessment. And that's actually done annually. Also upfront. So the voucher amounts will range, right? So on a 2-bedroom voucher, and from city to city, it's different. So, like, for example, in Memphis, it pays a little less. Like a 3-bedroom voucher pays as low as like $650, and as much as like $850. In Kansas City, a 3-bedroom voucher starts at like $775 and pays up to like $950. In Baltimore, it could pay like $1,200 to $1,400. So it just depends on that city and these areas, and it's subject to being reevaluated annually as well. Now you can fight it, so oftentimes you can provide comps, rental comps, and you can say, look, I got this rent for the one 2 doors over already, so why are you giving me this? So, or if you know other people, or you can go on like Go Section 8. That's actually their like a main hub for like information on Section 8 housing that's available. But the disadvantage there is like the housing authority has a special access to where they actually have properties that have already been leased, so they use those comps. But as the general public, you only have access to what's available now that is not rented. So there's a difference there.
So the voucher is the entire rent, or it's just part of the rent and then the tenant adds more?
Good question, yeah. So it depends on the tenant's current financial situation. So the voucher system is intended for like the bottom third or 30% in income. But here's a really screwed up thing about the system. if you work, you actually have to pay. If you don't work, you get a full ride. So, we have one of the reasons why we want to do this, and we have some things down the line that we want to work on is the system is broken because you're disincented to work, right? I mean, if you're sitting at home with a couple of kids and you go, hey, I want to make something out of myself, the moment you go out, step out and find a part-time job, not only do you have to pay rent, you have to find daycare for your kids. Otherwise, you sit at home and you don't do anything, and you get food stamps, you get subsidized housing, you get everything, right? So that doesn't make sense. But that's just how the system is right now. There's a lot of questions about Trump's president now, and Ben Carson, who doesn't have any experience with housing at all, what's he going to do? So there is some concern about how the whole thing is going to change. Concern as a landlord, but possibly something better for the system, possibly not. We don't know. But there are some wild cards out there at this moment because we don't know what the new policies are going to be. But in general, it's a very, very big program, so you can't make any major changes overnight. And then you also understand that the great majority of the people that are on the program are African American, and there's going to be issues. There's going to be they're going to have to target it if they're going to make a big change. So, but I can see people that were being fully subsidized, and you have to pay 10% of the rent, small amount, but it'll still save the system probably billions. So. There's a lot of things. Yeah.
If you're a landlord, what would you say are the biggest pros and cons if you want to convert to Section A?
Well, so I mentioned earlier there's a lot of people that buy these properties at auction, and then they just put a few $1,000s into it, and then they get it, they're probably all on the property for like $15,000, and then they just roll the dice and they just find any guy off the street and say, charge $500. From experience, I'll tell you right now, that's going to go bad probably like 9 months to a year, almost inevitably. But people still do it. We would rather actually spend maybe an extra $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to get it up to Section 8 standards, which is not by any means a high standard. It's just clean, safe, and mainly safe. Let's be safe. You can't have double bolts, and you can't have like screens on the door that can't unbolt in case of a fire, stuff like that. Just common sense stuff, actually. But oftentimes it's just you have to do a little bit more, and so some people actually just choose not to. They'd rather not pay the extra $2,000, $3,000 to get the place Section 8 ready, and they don't want to deal with the tenants, they don't want to deal with the housing authority, so they just rent it out to whoever, which would be a big mistake because for us, with stable tenants, with incentive programs to actually incent them to stay, and and treating them well, just the very basic thing like, hey, maybe we should treat them like human beings. That actually does the trick. Most of the time, they'll stay. Incredibly, within the program, I think about 20% of the participants actually move around year to year. So 1 out of every 5 are moving around. Why? Why would you want to move? It's because they're being mistreated. A lot of property managers don't know how to manage properties that are occupied by Section 8 tenants. And on the even more heinous side is there are actually a lot of people that own these houses and say, you know what, you're getting a free ride. I'm not going to give you nothing. And it's actually very, very true that happens. We know a lot of people that are like that. So they're like the slumlords. And these are what become slums. $1 million houses don't become slums. It's these low-income families in these poor areas. That's unfortunately where it goes. But yeah, to answer your question, they basically. What was your question?
What are the pros and cons?
Pros and cons, yeah, right. So, pros would be just that stable income. Government pays directly deposits the check in, or the money into your account at the beginning of every month. The tenant might have a portion of the rent that they have to pay themselves, but if they do, don't worry if you can't collect it because you have leverage. They'll get ejected from the program if they don't pay, and you report them. So, do they still try to work the system sometimes? Sure, but and if they have $10 a month and they don't pay, are you gonna eject them? That sometimes that's hard to say because to me it's kind of like, well, it's only $10. I mean, come on, right? You should pay because what else are you not gonna do. So some of the cons is that it's a single mother with 3 kids most of the time, 2 kids, 3 kids. So there's going to be a lot more wear and tear on the house. That's why it's very important that you try to keep them there. Don't move. So for us, we do things like when they move in, we actually give them incentives. We give them like a gift card, $250 to the grocery store or something like that. And then annually, we give them a gift card just because if you think about it, I mean, if the government's paying $750 and they're in there for like 5 years, that's almost $50,000 in rent. I mean, what's giving them that couple $100 a year? But that's beside the point. It's just really just when they call, answer the phone. It's as simple as that because a lot of people actually don't answer the phone when they call because they're like, that's just how they don't know how to deal with it.
So do you manage your properties then?
So I personally don't. However, when we start a new area and we're building a team, we're doing things, or we're not really sure how the operations are going to run, I sometimes actually will, for like the first 10 or 20 tenants, I will be the point of contact. I've done that. And I don't have a problem doing that because, they'll call me and I'll hear all the complaints or all the questions and problems and stuff like that, and I'll know where we need to kind of solve the most pressing issues. But no, we have teams in place. We generally don't like to have third-party people managing our own properties, but if we're just starting out in the market area and we don't have enough scale there, then we will have temporarily like local management companies handle the first 20, 30, 40 properties. Right now we manage about 350 homes in like about 6 markets. Actually, more like 4 markets. The rest of them we do fix and flips. We actually do fix and flips as well. We don't just do fix and flips. It is one of